my journey is kind of quite varied. I am a trained economist and a trained teacher, and I worked in both initially in my work journey, as it were. I then dabbled with taking a PhD, but decided against doing that because I didn't think I had the stamina to finish it. Then I took an MBA, worked in corporate for a few years. Then I did some sort of general freelance consulting for a while, and then about 15 years ago, I started building a footprint or doing, and also kind of doing some research into what it takes to build organizations that create better outcomes for the people, i.e., what does good service and good experience look like? Because it's always frustrated me that many organizations get in the way of their people doing a good job. And having built things and propositions that always had service value or employee value, customer value at their very heart, then it's always frustrated me how people got it wrong. So for the last 15 years, I've been writing about it either on my blog and I've written sort of 4 books. I run a podcast. I have a Forbes column, and I do. And over that time, my work has developed that I do a bunch of advisory projects with different organizations that have their own challenges that they like help solving. I do some direct interventions with brands around they have problems or a question, and I go in and either help them answer it or would talk to them about a particular topic, or I do a bunch of advisory work for people in the technology space. So advisory and advocacy sort of work, whether webinars, talking, research, white papers, writing, that type of stuff. And so that's kind of where my journey is up until now. So I'm really an advocate for better outcomes in the service and experience space and how we achieve that. So Punk CX is it's a book. It was born out of frustration. It's frustration because I was and am frustrated. Enthused and excited by the amount of activity and enthusiasm in the service and experience space, but frustrated at the lack of improvement in terms of outcomes. And though a few years ago, there was a point where I was speaking to a friend of mine in the pub, and we were talking about it, and I blurted out, I wish somebody would do something a bit more punk. I just do something that was going to have a bit of a difference, more of a dramatic difference. And it made me think about that because I'm a fan of punk music, and it made me think about where punk music came from, and punk exploded out of the back of progressive rock originally in the 1970s. And progressive rock, whilst it was popular, was also kind of like accused of being overly elaborate, self-indulgent, more interested in itself than in its fans, as it were, more interested in its own virtuosity. And punk was completely anti that and said, oh, look, anybody can have a go. Anybody can pick up some drumsticks or a guitar or a mic and try and form a band and make a song and, make some tunes. So it was a very democratic, all heart and emotion, all about impact type of approach. And that made me think, I said, oh, well, if that's true, I suspected that the experience space was exhibiting some of the same characteristics as the prog rock space did in the 1970s. And, you could make a case that says the experience space is overly codified, certified, benchmark frameworks, metric, all these different things. And I said, well, if that's true, and it therefore shares some of the same characteristics as progressive rock did in the 1970s, and it's becoming more interested in itself than its constituents, our end customers. And if that's true, then the hypothesis, well, then what would a punk version of customer experience look like? And that's what the book is about. And it looks a bit like this, Punk CX. and it's styled like an album, so it's all full color, it's all very short and pithy and to the point. It doesn't attempt to provide an answer. That's not the point. The point is to invite and encourage and cajole people into doing better work. That's what it's all about. It's saying, look, this is important and we need to do better. We need to do better, it's not just about creating an industry, it's about producing better outcomes for people. So that's what the book is about. Well, that's a really broad question. And like any good economist, I would say, it says the answer would be it depends. And it depends on your strategy and what your strategy is. So there is no one size fits all. However, at a kind of a high level, I would say that you'd want to be using technology to help agents do their job better. I.e., for example, you should be wanting to use technology as much as possible to try and help customers self-serve when you have simple queries, and to use kind of automation as much as possible to help customers help themselves in those sort of things. But then when things get more complex and then they have to come through to say agents on live channels, then you wanting to use technology to try and help agents better understand the context of the call or the interaction that they're dealing with, help them understand the customer's kind of either history and also their journey to them today, if possible. Then you should be thinking about how we could leverage technology to auto suggestions and also presenting a real-time analysis of kind of calls and so on and so forth, so they can preemptively and proactively kind of present knowledge that might be able to facilitate the answering of the customer's kind of questions. So I think there's lots of things that you can do, and how you would apply training to that to make kind of agents successful will all depend on how you configure all of that, and which would all depend on what your strategy is and what your setup is. So I hope that just helps you understand. Hope that answers your question. So I'm not sure it should be a C-level KPI, because I think then we get to the kind of point where we end up chasing numbers. Like I've heard stories of people, big CEOs from big firms on quarterly earnings calls reporting their NPS number to stock market analysts. And I think about that and go, that makes no sense at all. That's not, because your NPS score is not really comparable to anybody else. It is your NPS score. You're like how much money you made, kind of what your level of profitability are. Yes, that's a relative, that's a comparable metric, particularly when you're looking at stocks and investments. So should it be a C-level KPI? I don't know. Should it be a C-level kind of like, is there a metric that the C-level should be chasing? Who knows? It'll all depend on kind of like what it is, what the company, where you're at. But should it be a C-level concern and a C-level kind of issue and a constant discussion? I think absolutely. And I think that's the more important thing. It's a bit like because customer experience and customer service and that, all of that is a way of helping us understand how we serve our customers and and the sort of job that we're doing. And that should also, it should be a constant conversation about how we're doing. And if we're not constantly focusing on that and focusing on thinking about who we serve and how we serve them and how we're doing, then there's something wrong. And then we end up getting kind of almost too interested in what we do and not actually thinking about how it's received. Again, that's a really big question. And I don't know if there's one, but I'll tell you a piece of technology. So it's a technological application that I really like that is having a real impact where it's being applied. And it's not widely known and widely kind of heard of. And there's an application that's been developed by a friend of mine, a guy called Gavin Neat, and it's called Welcome, or the Welcome Me app. And what it focuses on is it focuses on people with disabilities. Because did you know that about 20% of the world's population, that's 20%, like 1/5 of the world's population, will identify as having some sort of disability or other. Whether that disability is seen or unseen, it doesn't matter. They will identify as having some sort of disability. And because of that, having those disabilities often prevents many people from doing the things that other people that are unencumbered by that don't have disabilities would find easy or straightforward. And so what the Welcome app does is it helps connect these people with disabilities who might need a particular type of service or a particular type of help when they go and visit something, particularly in the retail space, with an organization. And what it does is it allows, like, say, for example, say I am somebody that is, say I need a guide dog. So I'm visually impaired and I need to have a guide dog. Now, on the app, it would allow me to book an appointment, or rather an arrival slot with a signed up business in the retail space where I could notify them when I was kind of coming. They would be aware. What the app then does is, because it then not just tells them when you're going to be arriving, it also tells them, you can tell them about what sort of preferences that you have, or how to also engage with somebody that is using a guide dog that has a visual impairment. For example, never talk to the dog, never try and pet the dog, always talk to the person. The dog is there to work and to assist. It's not as a pet. All these little things that sometimes when we're reminded of them, we go, oh yes, that's of course. But actually in the moment we can get distracted and we actually focus on not the person and the need that they require. So, and because this app deals with all sorts of different disabilities, whether they are, as I say, seen or unseen, it can help people. It can basically kind of train staff in the moment and help them prepare to deal with these people that want to visit their business, but to help them understand how they can both make that interaction as seamless and as pleasant and as and easy and as effective as it needs to be. So I think that's a really, really interesting application. That when you say, can talk about disrupting the retail industry, well, it's disrupting it in a different way, i.e., it's giving people access to retail that wouldn't normally have access. And I wish more and more people knew about it and kind of implemented it, because I think it's a very simple thing, but it can have a massive, massive impact. So the advice I would give it would be quite straightforward. Is realize that inflation is going up for everybody, and it's affecting lots of people, but it's putting pressure on budgets, and it's making people become more and more discerning about where they spend their money. So the outcome of that is that actually customer service, good customer service, and good customer experience is going to be more important now and in the coming months and possibly the coming year than it's ever been. Or, when the economic conditions tighten, the importance of service and experience relatively goes up. And that's the thing that marketeers need to kind of bear in mind. That doesn't mean to say that you should necessarily always be trying to sell more, but you should be almost doubling down on how do you serve more and be more empathetic and more conscious of kind of the concerns and the challenges that your customers have, and be doing everything you can to help them and be a partner with them to help them continue to do business with you through this kind of time, if that's kind of what they want to do, but do it in a way that is empathetic and considerate of the kind of the real concerns and challenges that they have. I think the thing that you're going to need to do before you get to build the idea of building a culture of data-driven decision making is you have to be clear first and foremost on what is the experience that you want to deliver. First of all, you need to understand exactly kind of where you're at, be really honest and truthful about where you're at, but then you also have to have this vision about what it is that you want to deliver, and then you can start to think about data and what technology do I need to deliver that. And so the thing I kind of think about when people talk about how to build a culture of data-driven decision making, I mean, in many ways, I don't think the first and foremost should be concerned about of data-driven decision making, because that's an enabler for what it is they want to try and do. The thing I observe is that whilst many companies' vision and strategy, when you dig into it, and many companies they end up copying other people, and they're not doing anything different that's going to differentiate themselves from their competitors. And so I would say that there is no point having kind of just pursuing a data-driven decision making if you don't have a clear idea of what it is you're trying to do, or what it is you're trying to achieve. Because only when you know what you're trying to achieve do you know actually kind of where you need to focus, and where the gathering of data and the analysis of data, which is going to enable you to make better decision making, enable you to make better decisions, is going to help you and accelerate you along your chosen path to to your envisioned destination. That's what I think about that. I think first and foremost, they should set a good example. I would ask leaders the following kind of question. I would say to them, when was the last time that you mystery shopped your own business, or you answered a customer's query, or you resolved a complaint, or you rode along with one of your delivery drivers, or you worked in the warehouse, you did a whole shift in the work with the warehouse? Not that you just kind of like showed up and you walked around and you nodded and you smiled and you shook a couple of people's hands. None of that sort of like, managed circus type stuff. When was the last time that you actually collapsed the gap between you and the people that actually kind of do a lot of the hard work to produce the goods and services that your company markets and sells? And because only when you show to everybody that you really, really care and you're willing to get stuck in as as much as anybody else to make a difference, then you start to enable other people to think in that sort of way. And that's what I would say is like going, it always frustrates me when I ask people, so when they ask like leaders, when was the last time that you spent time with your customers, you spent time with your people that serve your customers or deliver to your customers or make the things that you sell to your customers or answer your customers' queries or, actually kind of, not just listened into something, but actually the problem yourself. And how often do you do that? And they're like, oh, we do it this time and that time, this time. Oh no, we don't do it very often. Or we have people that do that for us. And I tell and I get frustrated with that thing because I makes me think. So you're telling me, whilst your rhetoric says your customers are important to you, actually you're saying that you don't have the time, or you've got more important things to do than spend time with your customers, or the people that serve your customers, or the people that do the things for your customers. So that's a long answer to a short question, which basically is I think you should do your utmost to set a good example and reduce the gap between you and your customers and the people that you serve who serve your customers. And you should do it, and not as a one-time thing, but do it as a regular habit. You got to show up and keep showing up, and that'll be the I would say that'll be the trigger and the fire, and the spark that ignites the creation of a customer-centric culture. Teams need to realize that actually they need to talk to each other more often, and then they actually can do. They also need to realize that it's important they talk to each other, because you have to realize that internal service and how teams work together internally is a fundamental driver of good service to customers, good experience, all of those different things. What we do and how we operate, how we coordinate and how we collaborate and how we communicate internally is a huge driver of our external performance. And so what would I advocate that brands do if they want to incorporate consumer insights and feedback into their better processes across the customer-facing teams is not just share data with people, but share it and talk about it and arrange time to schedule time to talk about it. Here's what we've seen. What does this mean? What is it? Or what we learn from this? What can we do different? What do we do better? How does it impact us? Etc. Etc. We need to don't just kind of share widely, but actually share and collectively think about what does it mean? What is the impact? And how can we change it? Or what can we do different? What is it telling us? What can we learn? That's what I think we should do about that. It's not about the amount of data and the amount of analysis, the number of insights that we can do. It's about how we translate that into action. And some of that action will come about via how do we communicate and talk about and understand what it means for us collectively, and what we can do both individually and as teams and collectively to make to act on those insights. Well, I think there's two things. We need to understand that privacy will mean different things for different people. That's the one thing. So we need to understand that privacy is not a thing, and it's the same thing for everybody. That we have people have preferences. That's one thing, and it will change depending on. It's not just a fixed thing. It will change depending on the brand that they are dealing with. Similarly, personalization means different things to different people as well. And also research shows that what companies think personalization kind of means for them, is kind of different to what it means for customers. for many companies, personalization means I'm going to know more about you, but my ultimate objective is how do I sell you more stuff, get you to click on more campaigns, do cross sell, upsell, mix sell, whatever it might be, in order to maximize my revenue targets. Whereas from a customer's perspective, oftentimes it's not about buying more stuff. Yes, they will want to buy things as and when they need them or want them, but it's more about know me, kind of understand me, respect me. Don't um, don't make me feel like I'm being cajoled into something or that you're stalking me. And so I think the thing around about the balancing part, privacy and personalization, we need to think about is a complex thing. And I think at the very heart of it, it's all about trust. It's about trust and communication, in large part, I believe. But we need to think about we have to earn people's trust. We can't just assume it. But we also need to communicate about what we're doing and how we're doing it, but communicate in plain language. We need to be very transparent about what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve in order to build that trust. And ultimately, when it comes down to privacy and personalization, is we should only collect data that we're going to use, and we should always be asking permission for that and telling people about what we're doing. I mean, ultimately, I'd like to see companies, brands adopt and publish a customer data code of conduct. This is what we do with your data. This is how we kind of like how we treat it. This is what personalization and privacy looks like for us. This is what it means for you, and kind of this, and this is there for you to hold us to account, and then also to hold themselves to account on that and report on that. There's a few companies that do those sort of things. Many companies say that they do, but they don't really. If the people want to build that sort of that level of trust with their customers, I think they need to start thinking about all of these different things. So, but it's a complex thing, balancing privacy and personalization, because commercial pressures often get in the way of companies and brands respecting customers' desires. There was an old piece of research that said that yes, while customers want a more personalized experience and brands want to deliver it, many customers start to felt that brands' efforts a personalized customer experience oftentimes felt creepy. About 60% of them said it. Say many of these efforts felt creepy, that it was intrusive. It wasn't respecting their privacy. It was all a bit like a bit. But yet, also when you ask the marketeers about that, about 45% of marketeers also admit to the idea that they thought some of their campaigns that they are putting out were borderline creepy as well, which I think is like a shocking statistic, because what it basically says is like, that thing that we say as a customer, I would say, I don't want you to be a creepy brand, but as a brand marketeer, I am 1 in 2 brand marketeers are admitting to the fact that that some of the stuff that they do would be quite easily categorized as being creepy. And I think that tells you a lot.